Some people don't ask because they truly need your help. They ask because they want to know how much access they still have to you. And after 60, that distinction matters more than ever. Because the most valuable things you can give away now aren't sitting in your bank account. They're your time, your privacy, your peace, your right to make your own decisions. And once you give some of those things away often enough, people stop seeing them as gifts. They start seeing them as something they're entitled to. That's the trap. You spent decades showing up for people. You worked. You raised a family. You helped when someone was struggling. You answered the phone when it would have been easier not to. You sacrificed weekends, sleep, money, plans, and sometimes pieces of yourself because someone you loved needed you. There's nothing wrong with generosity. But generosity without boundaries has a strange way of turning into expectation. One favor becomes your responsibility. One exception becomes the new rule. One yes becomes the reason your next no suddenly makes you selfish. And maybe you've already experienced this. You finally say no to something you've done 100 times before. And instead of hearing, "I understand," "What's wrong with you? You never used to be like this. I thought I could count on you." That moment tells you something important. Sometimes people weren't grateful for your generosity. They were comfortable with your availability. Stoicism teaches us to separate what belongs to us from what does not. Your choices belong to you. Your character belongs to you. Your response belongs to you. Other people's disappointment does not. So here are 7 things you should think very carefully about giving anyone after 60. Not because you should become cold. Not because you should stop loving people. But because the years ahead deserve to belong to you too. The first thing you should never give away carelessly is your time. This becomes especially important after retirement. Someone calls at 10 in the morning. "Can you drive me somewhere? Can you watch the kids? Can you help me with this? Can you come over? You're retired anyway." That last sentence can sound harmless. But listen carefully to what it assumes. Because you no longer have a job controlling your calendar, your time must be available to everyone else. Retirement does not mean your time became public property. Maybe you want to spend Tuesday morning drinking coffee on the porch. Maybe you want to walk, work in the garden, meet a friend, sit in silence. Maybe you want to do absolutely nothing. You don't need to turn that empty space into something productive before you're allowed to protect it. One of the great lies of modern life is that time only has value when you're producing something. But after 60, you begin to understand something younger people often don't. Money can sometimes be replaced. Time cannot. You can make another dollar. You cannot make another Tuesday. And that changes what a request really costs. The danger isn't helping your daughter one afternoon. The danger is slowly becoming the person everyone calls because everyone assumes your plans matter less than theirs. Then one day you look at your calendar and realize something uncomfortable. You're busy all the time. But almost none of that time belongs to you. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that life is limited and that attention should not be wasted on what does not deserve it. That's not pessimism. That's clarity. You don't have to become difficult. You don't have to announce a new philosophy to your entire family. Sometimes a boundary is simply, "I can't today. Already have plans." And yes, resting can be a plan. You don't owe anyone a courtroom argument explaining why your afternoon matters. The people who respect you will adjust. The people who benefited from having unlimited access to your time may resist. That resistance is information. Remember this. A request is not an obligation. And your free time is still your life. But time isn't the easiest thing to lose after 60. There is something people can take without ever asking you to leave your chair. Your privacy. This is the second thing you should stop giving away simply because someone asks. How much money do you have saved? What did the doctor say? Who are you leaving the house to? Why are you seeing that person? How much did you pay for that? Are you changing your will? Why don't you tell me what's going on? Some questions come from genuine care. Others come from curiosity. And some are attempts to gain information that will later become leverage. Age does not cancel your right to privacy. Being someone's parent does not mean they are entitled to every financial detail. Being someone's friend does not mean they need access to every family problem. Being lonely does not mean you must reveal personal things to anyone willing to listen. This is where many good people get hurt. They confuse openness with intimacy. They're not the same. Real intimacy is earned. It develops through trust, consistency, discretion, and time. Oversharing can create the feeling of closeness long before actual trust exists. And after 60, there can be another pressure underneath it. You want to feel understood. Maybe your circle has become smaller. Maybe you've lost people. Maybe the house is quieter than it used to be. So when someone listens, it feels good to finally talk. That's human. But loneliness can make a bad listener look like a safe person. Be careful. You don't need to become suspicious of everyone. You simply need to stop treating every question as something that deserves an answer. Epictetus built much of Stoic practice around knowing what is yours to govern. Your private life is part of that territory. You decide who enters it. You decide how far they enter. And you are allowed to say, "I'd rather keep that private," without feeling guilty afterward. There is strength in being warm without being exposed. Friendly without being available for interrogation. Open without handing someone the map to every vulnerable place inside you. Because privacy isn't secrecy. Privacy is ownership. And once you understand ownership, the third trap becomes easier to see. Never give anyone unlimited access to you. This one is subtle because unlimited access often disguises itself as love. Your phone rings. You answer. A text arrives. You respond immediately. Someone drops by. You rearrange the day. Someone has a crisis. You become the emergency department. And again. And again. Eventually your nervous system starts living according to other people's needs. You can't finish a book without checking the phone. You can't enjoy dinner without wondering who might need something. You can't take a quiet afternoon without feeling guilty for being unreachable. That's not connection. That's availability without limits. And there's a difference. You can love your children without being on call 24 hours a day. You can care about a friend without becoming responsible for regulating every emotion they experience. You can be a wonderful grandparent without surrendering your entire week. You can support people without giving them a permanent key to your peace. This matters because habits teach people what to expect. If you answer every call immediately for 3 years, a delayed response suddenly feels like rejection. If you always cancel your plans to solve someone else's problem, eventually your availability becomes invisible. They stop seeing the sacrifice. They only notice when it stops. And this is where boundaries feel uncomfortable at first. Not because the boundary is wrong. Because you're changing a pattern. The first time you leave the phone in another room, you may feel guilty. The first time you say, "I'll call you tomorrow," you may feel like you're letting someone down. The first time you don't rescue an adult from a problem they could solve themselves, you may spend the evening wondering whether you were too harsh. That discomfort does not automatically mean you did something wrong. Sometimes it simply means you're learning a new way to live. And if you've spent 60 years being the dependable one, learning that can feel almost unnatural. If this part sounds familiar, tell me something in the comments. My time is still mine. Not for me. For you. Sometimes putting a boundary into words is the first time we realize we're actually allowed to have one. Because the fourth thing is where these patterns become much more serious. Never give another person control over your decisions. Advice is one thing. Permission is another. There comes a strange moment in some families when aging parents and adult children begin changing roles. Sometimes that's necessary. Health changes. Mobility changes. Finances become complicated. There are situations where help is wise and even essential. But help can quietly become control if nobody is paying attention. You should sell the house. You shouldn't be driving. You shouldn't travel alone. You shouldn't spend money on that. You should move closer to us. Why are you dating again? Why would you start something new at your age? Notice the language. Sometimes concern is real, but sometimes concern carries an unspoken message. We know what's best for you now. And that can be dangerous if you begin believing it automatically. Getting older does not make you a passenger in your own life. As long as you're capable of making your own decisions, those decisions remain yours. Listen to advice. Ask questions. Speak to professionals when necessary. Think carefully, but don't hand someone the steering wheel simply because they're louder, younger, more confident, or emotionally persistent. Seneca wrote extensively about independence of mind. Stoicism never demanded that you reject good counsel. It demanded that you develop judgment. There is a huge difference. A Stoic can listen without surrendering. You can say, "I'll think about it," without saying, "I'll do what you want." And this matters beyond family. Maybe someone thinks you're too old to start a small business, too old to travel, too old to move, too old to date, too old to learn something new, too old to change your routine, too old to live differently. Be very careful when someone else's fear starts disguising itself as wisdom for your life. They don't have to understand every decision. They aren't the one who has to wake up inside the consequences. You are. And there is something worse than making a decision that doesn't work out. Reaching the end of your life and realizing you lived according to everybody else's preferences. You can recover from a mistake. Regret over an unlived life is harder. But control over your decisions isn't even the most expensive thing you can surrender. The fifth is your peace, especially when you give it away just to keep someone else comfortable. Many people reach 60 with a lifetime of practice in keeping the peace. You don't mention what bothered you. You laugh off the disrespect. You change the subject. You apologize first. You accept the rude comment because you don't want dinner ruined. You tolerate the relative who always creates drama because that's just how they are. You keep absorbing discomfort so everyone else can remain comfortable. And people call you easygoing. But inside you're exhausted. This is where Stoicism gets misunderstood. Stoicism is not silently tolerating everything. It is not allowing people to disrespect you while pretending you're too enlightened to care. Emotional control means choosing your response. It does not mean abandoning your standards. Marcus Aurelius tried to remain calm around difficult people. But calm is not surrender. You can refuse conflict without refusing yourself. Sometimes peace requires leaving the room. Sometimes peace requires saying, "Don't speak to me that way." Sometimes peace requires declining an invitation. Sometimes peace means a relationship becomes more distant. That's painful, especially after 60, because when your circle is already smaller, losing another relationship can feel terrifying. And that fear can keep people in situations they would never recommend to someone they love. Think about that. Would you tell your best friend to tolerate the same behavior you're tolerating? Would you tell your daughter, "Just keep letting them insult you so nobody gets upset"? Would you tell your brother, "Keep answering those calls even though they ruin your entire day"? Probably not. So why is your peace worth less? There is a difference between peace and avoidance. Avoidance says, "I'll suffer quietly so nothing changes." Peace says, "I will not participate in what repeatedly destroys me." That distinction can change the rest of your life. And if you know someone who has spent years keeping everybody else comfortable at their own expense, send them this video. Sometimes people don't need another lecture. They need permission to stop abandoning themselves. Because eventually the cost isn't just peace. It becomes dignity. That's number 6. Never give away your dignity in exchange for approval. This happens more often than people admit. You explain yourself again, then one more time. You try to prove your intentions. You send the long message. You make the call. You replay the conversation. Maybe if I explain it differently, they'll finally understand me. But some people don't misunderstand you because you explained badly. They misunderstand you because understanding you would require them to question the story they prefer. That's a hard lesson, especially when the person is family. You can spend years trying to convince someone that you're not selfish, not difficult, not cold, not irresponsible, not a bad parent, not a bad friend. And every explanation quietly puts them in the position of judge. You're asking them to approve your life. At some point, stop. Not angrily, not dramatically. Just stop. Let your characters speak over time. Let people have an incomplete version of you. Let someone disagree. Let someone be disappointed. Let someone tell a story about you that you would never tell about yourself. You don't have to attend every trial you're invited to. That's dignity. Epictetus taught that when we place our peace in external judgments, we make ourselves dependent on things we cannot command. You cannot control whether someone understands you. You can control whether you spend another 5 years begging them to. And maybe this is the sentence someone watching needs today. You are allowed to be misunderstood and still be at peace. Read that again in your own mind. You are allowed to be misunderstood and still be at peace. There is enormous freedom in that. Because once you stop needing approval, manipulation loses one of its favorite handles. Guilt becomes less effective. Silent treatment becomes less effective. Disappointment becomes less effective. You begin choosing from conviction instead of fear. And that brings us to the seventh thing. The one that good-hearted people struggle with most. Never give endless second chances to someone who keeps repeating the same behavior. Forgiveness is powerful. But forgiveness and access are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still change their place in your life. You can wish them well and stop answering the late-night calls. You can love them and stop lending them money. You can understand their pain and refuse to become its target. You can accept an apology without restoring the old level of trust. This is where many people get trapped. Someone hurts you. They apologize. You forgive them. Nothing changes. They hurt you again. Another apology. Another promise. Another chance. Eventually the apology becomes part of the cycle. Not the end of it. Watch behavior. Words matter, but patterns tell the truth. A person who genuinely values another chance usually does something with it. They change. Maybe imperfectly. Maybe slowly. But something changes. If every second chance returns you to the exact same wound, you're not witnessing growth. You're witnessing repetition. And after 60, repetition becomes expensive. How many more years do you want to spend recovering from the same person's same behavior? That's not a cruel question. It's a necessary one. You don't need revenge. You don't need to hate them. You don't need to prove they were wrong. You simply need enough self-respect to stop volunteering for the same lesson. Stoicism is deeply concerned with character. Yours first. But character also teaches you to judge people by what they consistently do, not only by what they promise during emotional moments. So forgive if forgiveness gives you peace. But let trust be rebuilt by evidence. Let access be earned. Let changed behavior matter more than beautiful words. And remember, a closed door does not always mean hatred. Sometimes it means the lesson finally landed. Now look back at all 7. Your time, your privacy, your access, your decisions, your peace, your dignity, your second chances. None of these things require you to become selfish. They require you to become deliberate. And maybe that's one of the deepest lessons of growing older. For much of life, we're taught that being a good person means giving. Give your time. Give your attention. Give another chance. Be understanding. Be available. Be patient. And much of that is beautiful. But wisdom adds a second half to the lesson. Know what should not be given away. Because kindness without judgment can become self-neglect. Generosity without boundaries can become resentment. Forgiveness without change can become permission. And love without self-respect can slowly erase the person doing the loving. After 60, you don't need to become harder. You need to become clearer. Clear about what matters. Clear about what you will tolerate. Clear about who has earned access. Clear about how you want to spend the years ahead. There will always be people who don't like your boundaries. That's okay. A boundary was never designed to make everyone happy. It was designed to make your values visible. Marcus Aurelius could not control the people around him. Neither can you. But you can control whether their demands become your commands. You can control whether guilt writes your calendar, whether fear makes your decisions, whether loneliness chooses your relationships, whether other people's opinions determine your worth. That is where your freedom still lives. And perhaps the greatest gift you can give the people you truly love isn't unlimited access to you. It's a version of you that is peaceful enough to love without resentment, strong enough to help without being used, wise enough to say yes when you mean yes, and brave enough to say no when you mean no. If you've made it this far, I want you to do something simple. Choose one of these 7 things you've been giving away too easily. Just one. and write it in the comments. My time, my privacy, my peace, my dignity, whatever is true for you. Not because a comment changes your life, but because naming something makes it harder to keep pretending you don't see it. And if these conversations help you become calmer, stronger, and more deliberate with the life you still have ahead of you, subscribe. There is much more we need to talk about. But for today, remember this. You can be generous without being available to everyone. You can forgive without reopening every door. You can love people without handing them control of your life. And you can grow older without slowly disappearing inside everybody else's needs. Protect what still belongs to you. Your time, your peace, your choices, yourself. Because after 60, those aren't small things. They're your life.